But he is going to ask Linda. I have the 2 newspapers for you. Do you want me to hold it till I get the 3rd one, or
Yeah, if you can hold it till you get to the 3rd one, it'd be great, Bob. All right, we're good.
Okay, so we're actually recording now, so the meeting is in session. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will start with the minutes from our previous Zoom board meeting. Does anybody have any questions, comments, additions, deletions, subtractions, what have you?
Nope.
I do on one. Hang on a second.
Okay,
I'm going to look it up.
okay.
Hi, Michael.
Hello. I'm just finding my agenda.
Okay. On the short work session minutes, on the last paragraph, or next to the last paragraph, the last big paragraph, it says trustee Heinley suggested that due to just having raised the sewer rate with COVID-19, the village should establish the reserve rate to take effect during the fiscal year 2021-2022. I think what I was trying to suggest is that we go ahead and establish the reserve fund and establish the rate during our budget discussions for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Does that make sense? The distinction being that if we establish the fund now, if by some miracle at the end of this fiscal year we had some excess funds, we could put that in that already established reserve. Now, I don't know if it really makes a difference to what it says there, but certainly that my intention wasn't to just wait and hold off on the whole thing till fiscal year 2021.
Does that make sense, Linda?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So we will adjust the minutes accordingly, Bob. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, additions, deletions, subtractions, what have you in reference to the minutes? Okay,
No.
and the minutes. Thank you. Then the minutes. I'm watching Bob adjust his curtain. I'm sorry. The minutes the amended minutes will stand as written.
And I just saw that we had a live Danielle and not just a picture.
Exciting stuff.
I'm adjusting the curtains because I'm not used to having the sun shine in.
So we can move on to the clerk treasurer's report.
We will need modifications, please.
That means we're looking for a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
Motion, second. Oh, there's Danielle.
I'm here.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any discussion? We'll call a vote. Jason.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Danielle.
Yes. Sorry, my mic. I couldn't find it.
That's
We just
okay.
have the
Thank you.
headset on. It's weird.
All right. Then we'll start with the general fund. Any questions or comments about the general fund? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the water fund. Any questions or comments pertaining to the water fund? All right, then we'll move on to the sewer fund.
I'm leaving.
Please don't turn on the alarm.
You were in when I turned it on you? I am sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't even think
That's okay.
Any questions or comments pertaining to sewer fund? Okay, I don't have mine in front of me right this moment. So are we moving on to the library fund, or is there a trust and agency in there? Trust and agency?
There's trust and agency and library both.
Okay, so trust and agency. Any questions or comments about trust and agency? Okay, then the library is just informational. Then I'll look for a motion and a second to pay the bills.
I'll move it.
Second,
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? We can't look at each other like to tell who's making what motion now in the same room.
Somebody needs to go like this or this.
Yeah. Okay, we'll call the vote. Jason,
Yes.
Bob,
yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Danielle.
Yes.
Okay. So the public hearing to adopt the sewer rate has been delayed because there was a snafu in advertising it. We found out that we need to do it as a local law instead of by resolution. So we are going to do it. I believe everybody got a meeting invitation for Thursday the 30th. That will still allow us to pass it in time to enact it in the quarter that we planned. So are three of us available that night to just hold a quick digital meeting and pass it?
What was the date again? I'm sorry.
What is the date? Yeah.
Thursday,
The 30th.
next Thursday.
I can make that work.
Okay.
That works for me. My calendar's pretty clear these days.
Thursday, May 5th.
April 3rd.
April 30th, Mike.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Columbus set sail the ocean blue in 1492, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know yet.
As long as we get three of us, then we're good. So,
I can make it.
okay.
I probably can make it.
Okay.
Just an FYI, I did have one person ask about it and ask for the sewer law and what the new rates were going to be. So I've provided that for them, and that was a person from the fairgrounds. So y'all know.
Is the invitation to this meeting the thing you sent out just before this meeting?
Yes.
I could not open that for some reason.
No, I sent the one out just before this meeting for this meeting. Ryan couldn't find it, so I sent it out to everybody again. I sent out the one for the 30th earlier today.
Okay, I'll look for it.
Okay.
I assume it's 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next thing would be to continue the COVID-19 relief resolution for our staff that this affects. I have had some questions from at least one staff member that this affects. So I guess I just want to bring it up for discussion to see, if there is anybody, if the board has any thoughts or feelings about this yet, or are we just, as of now, we're still on under New York pause New York, whatever it's called, through at least the middle of May. So my intentions would be to continue it until at least that time, but I wanted to open it for discussion just so we can, calm any employee fears or address them. If we're all on board with continuing it, we're all on board, and that's all well and good.
Our next meeting is May 13th, and I believe the governor's got it paused through the 15th, but he very well might make a comment or something before that in his daily address.
Are there any particular grievances we have to address, or are they not really grievances?
No, it's no grievances. It's just, financial concern, health insurance concern. There's no.
Okay. I imagine we're still business as usual. We're still covering the medical, our side of the medical and all that stuff. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So would we like to pass this until our next meeting?
Sure.
Is that a motion, Jason?
Sure. I can make a difference.
Okay. Thank you. We have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? We'll call the vote. Jason,
Yes.
Bob,
yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Danielle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the attorney's report. How are you, Nate?
Oh, doing well. How's everybody?
Good.
And then, so Linda and I had talked after the meeting last week for the reserve fund discussion. And I think after the clarification tonight, I can have prepared for the next meeting a pretty straightforward resolution to establish a reserve fund. But I guess the question for you folks is, what kind of a reserve fund are we interested in creating?
Was it the, I forget the exact distinctions.
Yep. So we could do a repair
Equipment.
reserve fund, which would be for emergency repairs to the system or for some equipment. You could do a
O&M?
reserve fund, or you could do an equipment purchase fund. You should not do an O&M fund. Oh no, an O&M fund is just that's just normal operations and maintenance. That's just your regular monies anyway.
What was the second one, Nate? You cut out on my end.
Oh, see if I can remember the order I just said.
Emergency repair.
Emergency repair, capital building, infrastructure improvements, and then the third one is equipment, vehicles, things like that.
I know my original intent was for repairs, but I think I would like it to be as the least restrictive as possible. Does that make sense?
That does, and you'll recall, I think, if the intent is to be least restrictive as possible, and to set aside money for repairs, I would encourage you to look at your regular O&M needs and figure out the number that you should also have budgeted on an annual basis for kind of, I'll say, the expected, unexpected repairs. Not something that's so drastic, but things that, you just know things break over the course of the year. You can't say what specifically is going to break, but something's going to break. And you should appropriately, I think, budget a little bit of money each year for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be more what you're considering, I think.
And you said to put it in an unassigned fund balance.
Right. And I mean, for your budget line item during the year, it could be, just general repairs, nothing specific. And then at the end of the year, if you haven't spent that money, I think you could carry it over as unassigned fund balance, or you could appropriate it for another line item, of course. But there's definitely ways to budget ordinarily where I think you're concerned without creating a reserve fund. But then again, we can always create the reserve funds. You don't have to put money into them if you choose not to.
So I know one of our concerns coming out of the work session about fund balance was, future boards won't know what fund balance is there for. And I think we all, strongly acknowledge, yeah, that's definitely true. I got thinking about that a little more. And no, I think the thing is that it would be up to them at that time as to what it still has to be used for sewer. It has to be used in sewer for some type of either repair or equipment or whatever. But it is locked to the sewer fund, even if it is a fund balance. So it's up to you guys. If we want to establish the reserve, just do that, and then like we plan to.
What I would say is if it's clearly defined in your minutes is what the intention of it was for, that would be a huge help where we didn't have that now.
My concern, I think, is that the type of repair that we're looking at this reserve fund for is something that would be so large that the thought of taking it out in one budget year
Mhm.
would be scary. So it's almost something like I would rather contribute a little towards each year and have a running reserve so that we would have a larger amount that we could then, repair. I don't know. What if a tank leaks or something like that? It's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. And that's not an amount we would plan to put away in a fiscal year. So I know you can go through and carry it forward, but after a while, if it's not in a reserve fund, I worry about the justification of overcharging somebody in anticipation of something like that. Whereas if we have a reserve fund, at least it's allocated and it's there and earmarked as such. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
I'm not making sense to myself tonight.
No, it sounds to me like maybe you're suggesting like the emergency repair type of reserve, that first one.
I guess I'm not really particular in what we call it, but that was what my intent was. I'm afraid that when something big gets damaged, that we're not going to have enough liquidity to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I guess that would have to be an emergency. I guess that would classify as emergency repair. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the position to do a capital reserve. I would feel most comfortable with probably the emergency repair. Equipment is something that we can budget for. Though that's what I would think of. Like, if we're going to replace equipment, we will budget for that proactively to our ability. But yeah, I think emergency repair makes the most sense.
I'm fine with that.
Anybody else on the board feel the same or differently?
I think I like the conversation that you and Jason just had. That seemed to plug some of the last gaps for me. I think it's a good idea, emergency reserve fund, and then, like you said, we can always budget for any equipment down the road. But we do have to.
Right. And we
definitely
will
start-
budget into it, but this is just more for unforeseen stuff, right?
Right, exactly.
Emergencies. So that's fine with me.
Yeah, me too. That I like the tenor of the conversation. That's all I have to add.
Can we call it the emergency big honkin' repair fund?
I feel like we need to come up with a really good acronym. I'm on it.
BH repair. What's BH stand for? It's technical. Big honkin'.
Nate, can that legally be done?
BH also stands for Bob Heinley. Just so
Oh
you know.
yeah, I never thought of that, Jerry. Oh, he snuck in Bob. Yeah.
No,
Big
I'm
honkin',
fine with
sure.
calling it whatever you want, as long as it's authorized as a GML, 6 dash whatever the letter is. It's your repair reserve. I love the idea of a fun acronym because those are always.
The important thing is that it's set up correctly so
Yes.
that when the time comes where whatever board decides to tap it, it can be tapped. And I definitely trust, Coughlin and Gerhardt to ensure that. So,
Proverbial expletive hits the fan. Correct.
So I'll
Hopefully
have
figuratively, not
prepared for the next meeting then a resolution to create a sewer emergency repair reserve, name still TBD.
sure, sounds
Big
good.
honkin'. Big honkin'.
Do you have anything else for us, Nate?
I think that was it for the moment. If anyone has any questions, of course, or anything that I'm missing, please feel free to let me know.
I do have a question. Do you have any clients that are as fun as we are?
Well, I mean, the Village of Owego's pretty fun.
Moving on.
Fun is a very subjective term.
Moving on.
Just picking on you, Nate.
All right.
All right. Old business. I have a couple things to mention and potentially discuss. I mentioned in an email to everybody that Jim's job has been posted. My plan is to run it through the end of this month to leave it open, so to speak, to applications, and then to move pretty quickly after that within a week or two. As of this time, we have just one application actually, and it is our internal application for an update on our current laborers certification to 2B. Just so everybody knows, he has completed everything that he needs to complete. He is currently waiting for rural water and the health department to administer his tests. So I spoke with him about it, and that is where that currently stands.
We might want to start looking into, in case this continues, if we can't get him a test before, if we were to decide on him and he can't take the test because of the current pandemic situation, whether or not we could grant like a waiver or something. We could be granted a waiver.
Yeah, I think I asked him to push rural water and the health department to give him some type of ETA, so we can make some type of plan if we decide to go down that path. Any other questions or comments or concerns as far as Jim's succession goes? I've got a second thing under old business. Okay. We had talked a little bit during our budget meetings about potentially changing the way we handle code enforcement. We talked about potentially splitting the job duties into two, or a succession of our current code enforcement officer, as he intends to retire within less than a year now. So I talked with Dave Conklin, who is one of he's currently our backup code enforcement officer, and I guess, Nate, this is a good time to talk to you. If we were going to bring on, I guess what I would officially just call, a second code enforcement officer with the same job description, what do we need to do legally to make that happen?
So you would be effectively creating a deputy code enforcement officer position. There can only be, quote unquote, one actual code officer as like the public officer. So the second individual would be considered, I believe, an employee. Contact civil service, they have the code enforcement officer, job duties, descriptions.
I've got it.
It would be a motion to authorize the creation of probably a part-time code enforcement officer position, and then to employ or appoint this person to that position. And then at the time that the Mr. Jennison, I believe, ends up retiring, then you would simply appoint the new person to the full-time public officer code enforcement position.
I can't recall, and Nate, you just may know, or Linda, you may know. Is that just a one-time appointment by the board? Both of those positions would be a one-time appointment? Is that how the hire is made?
I believe for the official code officer position, that is typically has a term associated with it. I want to say it's a year.
I don't think ours is. I don't ever remember us approving him every year.
We never have since I've been mayor.
But he's not in that every year category. He just has been appointed once, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
The clerk treasurer and the secretary are based upon the mayor's term for appointments. But
so we can look into that, but given your not doing it every year, I'd say continue to do that until we determine otherwise. But you could certainly, I think, when you appoint someone to the position, have it as an annual appointment if that's what you chose to do.
Annual or biannual based on mayor, maybe?
I'd probably stick with regular annual, and just during the organizational meeting, the code enforcement officer would be whoever it is. How do you guys do your dog control officer, for example, or is that handled by the town?
That one is more complicated because that one we actually contracted with the town of Fenton. So we sent, to my knowledge and my memory, since we initially did that, we have not reauthorized that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's
Well,
also it's a personnel and equipment sharing agreement.
Oh, okay. It's an IMA with them to do that. So I'll take a quick double check as to whether that should be an annual thing, but drilling back to your original question, how to hire a second person, it would be just contact civil service, let them know you want to do part-time or part-time code enforcement position, and have the board at a meeting authorize the creation of that part-time position and then appointing this gentleman to that position.
Would we not legally need to authorize a position like that?
You would need to have the board
Or not authorize, I'm sorry. Advertise. That's the word I meant to use.
So that is something that if it's truly a part-time thing, I think you could hire somebody who otherwise meets the qualifications, like you would kind of any sort of a person for any of your other positions. It's not likely a civil service mandatory, test type of a situation, and unless you have some collective bargaining agreement that applies, that requires posting and advertising. I believe that for a part-time position like that, you wouldn't need to advertise.
Okay.
I can get a hold of civil service tomorrow and then let y'all know what they tell me.
Yeah, they're very helpful when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
I really don't think we have done anything with appointments of the CEO since we appointed him to take his father's place probably, 20 years ago?
I was going to say, when I was on the board in the 80s, he was just coming on board. So.
Since I've been with the board, and I don't know how long that is now, but I've never heard of a discussion like that.
Yeah. So we'll bring that full circle, but I wanted to keep that in the hopper, so to speak. So does anybody have any?
It was the 90s, Bob. I'm sorry. It was the 90s when I was on the board before, not 80. I was off by 10 years.
So that's all I had. Does anybody else have old or new business or anything that they'd like to bring up for discussion?
Ryan, I'd like the minutes to reflect that we acknowledge the passing of Dan Thorpe, valued community member. I don't know if you guys have known. I know Bob, and some of you know him. Bob and I spent a lot of time with Dan, and he was a good man, and the village lost a really quality person. It's too bad.
He worked for Broome County Transportation, I take it?
He did. Did you see the parade here?
I saw the videos.
Earlier today, the video, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, and he was a very good person, and worked a lot with the school, and his children are still, some of his kids are still local, and Ryan's still a trooper, and it's just sad that he left us way too early.
He really cared about young people.
He did, and he was a very stand-up, charitable, good man, and sad, very sad.
The minutes will definitely reflect that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any old or new business or items for discussion?
Any decision on refuge pickup for the first Tuesday in May?
As far as
Extra brush. for
like lawn,
Yes.
lawn waste, I would say we should not do it since we have an active case in the village.
When the minutes are done, when we're done recording the minutes, I'd like to just talk just real quickly to Bob, if I can, Bob and Jason, anybody else who wants to talk real quick. But I'll just wait for the meeting to wrap up.
I have nothing new other than just the brush pickup part.
Okay, any other items for discussion?
Do we actually have a active case in the village now?
I believe they're off active, but it's,
Yeah,
if you look at the active listing, I believe they're not active at this point.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they're doing that. I don't know if if they move to a hospitalization, if that registration moves with them.
I don't know.
But, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
All right, then I will stop recording. Right, everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Meeting adjourned.